count. There you go. You heard it say recording in progress. You may need to accept that.
So they've got it.
Lovely. So are you happy? Everything comfortable and ready?
Yes.
All right. So when you're ready, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and live.
It's a great pleasure for me to speak with you all today. So many of you have been a part of an industry I love for over 25 years. And my name is, as many of you know, Carl Stephen Patrick Hunter, and I'm the chairman of Coltraco Ultrasonics. Some people ask me, and have done for a couple of decades, what ultrasonics are. Ultrasound is merely sound beyond the audible range. In my company, we aim to see the sounds that others cannot hear. We do this in the air domain, much as bats navigate. You will have seen that on BBC wildlife programs. And that's called Airborne Ultrasound. And then we use sound in liquids, such as whales and dolphins under the sea. And the significance of that for the fire industry is that you, as you well know, use liquefied and non-liquefied gaseous extinguishing systems, which are contained generally in 45 kilogram cylinders. In other words, cylinders that are too large to move easily by hand. So if we use the sound that a bat would in ultrasonic equivalent terms, we can identify the gaseous non-liquefied phase of a liquefied gas by showing that the sound is behaving differently, moving at a different speed above the liquid than it will when we're below the liquid level in the liquid area. Because the reason why whales and dolphins can communicate at such long distances is fundamentally because ultrasound travels far more quickly in liquid than it does in air. And that's really the heart of our contribution to the fire industry globally. We are the leaders in our field of the contents monitoring of gaseous systems. And I'll come on in a minute as to the relevance of that. In terms of time, for a two-man or two-person team to dismantle, weigh, reinstall and reconnect a 45 kilogram cylinder of, say, carbon dioxide, which is a commonly used gas in, say, a ship's engine room at sea, it would typically take them about 15 minutes per cylinder. But there can be up to 600 cylinders on a ship. So eventually you're talking about a 2 to 3 day period of time just to do that one element of a complete servicing or certification of the critical fire system. When you use ultrasound in the way that we've designed it over 25 years, you can do each cylinder with one person in 15 seconds. And that's really the essence of our discussions today. And by the way, I hope you enjoyed today. You've got some fantastic speakers ready to address you, and I inevitably will them on to their success. So broadly, Coltraco Ultrasonics designs and manufactures ultrasonic safety technology for the measurement and the monitoring of liquefied gaseous extinguishing systems. And we also design other equipment to measure the leak sites of the compartments into which those gaseous systems discharge. And you might ask why. Well, it's fundamental to this talk. British standards long ago decided and determined for engineering and safety reasons that you had to design and install and maintain gaseous systems that would discharge into a compartment, and that compartment would be sufficiently strong and airtight to be able to contain the gas that is discharged into it in the fire event. Well, we're the only company in the world that can do all of those things. Monitor the contents of the gaseous system so that the fire event has the contents in the gas to be able to extinguish it if it sadly occurs, and that the compartment into which it discharges is sufficiently airtight so that it holds the gas as per British standards 14520, 14520 as we call it, gaseous extinguishing systems, where the United Kingdom has led the world in that becoming an ISO standard. So it's actually BS ISO 14520. And my company has been on the working group for those, to assist and advise on the development of those standards for many, many years. And I'd like to thank all the colleagues in the UK fire sector for their massive contribution to develop that standard as they have. Other applications for ultrasound. So for instance, during COVID-19, the government issued a request for manufacturers like mine just to evaluate whether we could do other things. And it might interest you to colleagues in the fire industry that we were given an award by government to design an instrument called Portascanner COVID-19 to identify the leak sites and determine their extent in negatively pressurized ICU wards for COVID-19 patients, so that the rest of the hospital wasn't infected from the negatively pressurized ICU ward into the rest of the hospital. At our own financial cost, we built on that to develop Portascanner Airtight 520, so that large commercial buildings could test for their airtightness, because they couldn't ventilate with pathogen-free air unless they were airtight. So we're playing a small part in the safe working conditions for people to return safely to properly ventilated offices, which I'm very proud of. Coltraco export 89% of its output to 120 countries, and we hold the Queen's Award for Enterprise in the international trade category. What does that mean? Firstly, I'm very proud of my team, and I define a company as the sum of the individuals. So I take real pleasure in those individuals winning that award. That's the way we see it. But it also means that we've had 6 years continuous growth in exports to get that award. And I think we're only one of 30 to 40 companies out of 5.9 million companies in the UK to have done that. So I'm particularly proud of that. We were recently named British Innovator of the Year by Innovate UK. And last year, during COVID-19, I'm proud to say that after 3 years' work, we did 3 things. We obtained the Senate of Durham University's approval to create the Durham Institute of Research, Development and Invention. We opened our laboratory at the Centre for Advanced Instrumentation, which is part of the Department of Physics at Durham University. And then as my gift to the nation, and specifically to the Royal Navy Post-Integrated Review, to come to the point of our talk, we have created within that institute the Centre for Underwater Acoustic Analysis, so that the Royal Navy can be lent a hand, if required, as a single focused research organisation that Coltraco Ultrasonics will develop. So back to this specific time together. We are at the heart of 2 principal reasons for the loss of ships at sea. The number 1 reason is sinking, and the number 2 is fire. In sinking, we are the leaders in the world in the watertight integrity monitoring of a ship. And in regard to the second reason for ships being lost at sea, the fire side, we're the number 1 in the world for the monitoring of those gaseous extinction systems. We do both to incredible levels of accuracy. This has never been done before. So CO2 can be monitored now to plus or minus 1.5 millimeters of accuracy. And if you think of that in relative terms to a 45 kg cylinder, which is basically the size, maybe 5'10" to 6 feet in height, you can gather that we're right at the cutting edge of that accuracy. In terms of leak detections for ships, naval or commercial, we can identify a leak site as small as 0.06 millimeters with a tolerance of 0.02 millimeters, which has never been done in the history of mankind. On land, though, our principal focus is in the monitoring of normal gaseous systems used in high hazard critical sites such as data centers, power stations, electricity substations, etc. So we combine our understanding of airflow dynamics and fluid dynamics together in our offerings globally. And I think that's one reason why we are exporting the amount that we do to so many countries. And I'm very proud of that. Across the wider industrial sector, we have an array of other instruments, which I won't go into. Now, the principal point of our talk today is to ask the question, how does the new Planning Gateway 1 and other British standards play a wider role for fire safety globally in relation to the integrated review of foreign, defence, security and development policy. For those of you that haven't read the integrated review, I really commend it. It is an extraordinary document which our country has waited for probably 40 or 50 years, or even since 1945. Number one, because I believe most people in our country are decent, its number one aim is to set the path for this country to be a global force for good. I don't believe many of you may know that if you haven't read it, and it rather saddens me that it's not more widely publicized. But that's our single national aim overseas today. So no more Iraqs, no more Afghanistans in that sense. It's about being the people that we were born to be and to try to assist the world to be a more stable, secure and prosperous place overall. So the government's integrated review was published in, I think, February or March of 2021, and it places trade and finance at the heart of British foreign policy for the first time in 200 years. The UK, as you know, is a global leader in exporting, indeed the second largest exporter of services in the world, and the fifth largest exporter overall, which I know most of you will be surprised at. And the only reason you're surprised at it is because we're all brought up to think we should have the world's largest merchant navy, the largest Royal Navy, and we should be the world's number one exporter. Well, being fifth isn't so bad out of 196 members of the United Nations. Exporting constitutes 30% of our entire GDP. And the government's aim in its export strategy, which was recently published, is to increase that to 35% of GDP by the mid-2030s. And I think it's very achievable. National prosperity generates domestic stability, generates domestic security and stability. It finances our collective security, which enables our global security and stability. And these really are the prerequisites of global prosperity, which is therefore a UK national aim, and why within the Global Force for Good objective overall, it's a great one, since we know that the world's poor should not be. And the only way that we can lift those out of poverty is to continue to make the world accessible to them for their own prosperity too. British standards generate ISO standards, as I mentioned earlier, International Standards Organization standards, ISO standards. And they contribute, actually in their own way, to the rules-based international system, which has generated the greatest levels of global prosperity since 1945. The principles of these were enshrined in the Atlantic Charter. And you might remember that earlier last year, that was renewed by President Biden and Prime Minister Johnson. The UK and the USA, after all, created our world today in those terms. And this renewal of that charter places the special relationship at the helm of global stability once again. It's been reinforced by, by the end of that year, by the AUKUS agreement between the UK, USA and Australia. And I believe that will become the UK's second special relationship overall, aiming to stabilize the Indo-Pacific, where 50% of global trade and in excess of 50% of all global growth will shortly occur, but which is now also sadly a highly contested region. People tend to forget that the UK is a global power. We're at the heart of 54 members of the Commonwealth. We're a P5 member of the United Nations Security Council. We are NATO's second largest military contributor, one of only 2 nations on Earth with 5th generation carrier and littoral strike, i.e. amphibious strike capabilities, a member of Five Eyes and the Five Powers Defense Agreement in Asia. We generate more Nobel Prizes for science at one Cambridge college than the entire nation of a neighboring EU country whose capital begins with P. We have the world's second largest diplomatic network internationally, or one of only 6 nations on Earth with nuclear submarines, with nuclear submarines, and one of only 5 with an independent submarine-based nuclear deterrent. We are the only country with a special relationship with the USA in its Atlantic Charter form. And our countries together do more bilateral trade and finance with each other than any other countries on earth. Indeed, we do 220 billion pounds worth of trade each year and over $1.5 trillion in finance. We are both global leaders in sport, music, theatre and art, and whilst leading the world in cyber security and soon elements of space as well. We're a member of more multilateral organizations than any country outside the USA. And we created with the USA today's world with the USA since 1945. And here's something which all of us should remember. We are so captured in our country by the sadness of both world wars. But I'll just make this little appeal that we should also be so uplifted by the following. In 1945, we created with the USA, the United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, an equal member at Commonwealth of Nations, and NATO itself, all overseas for that rules-based international system that has made so much prosperity for us globally. But at home, we created the National Health Service, the welfare state, and equality for women under the law too, all at a time of near bankruptcy, when GDP to debt was 250%, and when bread itself was rationed for nearly 11 long years. And we're about to do it again, because since June 2021 last year, when our countries renewed the Atlantic Charter, and we are building further on that with the Strategic AUKUS Agreement, which is going to be the second special relationship overall and extending to the Indo-Pacific, I believe that this is a wonderful time to be British and that the world will be a safer and more prosperous one with the UK at its helm, with that global force for good objective in the integrated review overall. So the government, so what are the complexities and opportunities of what do we have to do in the UK at government level, business level to make all these things happen? Well, I'm in my last couple of minutes of this, so I'll just suggest some things for you. The government is adopting a whole of government approach to energize a whole of society approach to national success. This makes the government-business relationship a fundamental instrument of national success. UK companies have a tremendous opportunity to succeed in global markets. And as we are seeing companies that have grown accustomed to exporting to the single market are now learning that to continue in EU markets, they have to become true export practitioners overall by working in non-EU markets as well. This expertise will particularly equip non-EU historically EU exporters to export more, both to the EU, our partners, by the way, and let's never forget that, and to non-EU markets globally. We in Coltraco Ultrasonics are proud to be part of the 8.8% of UK companies who export at all. Why? Because exporters who do it consistently are 20% more effective and more profitable than non-exporters. It's in a way for me a national duty to export more. Nothing gives me more pleasure than one of my team turns around to me and says, we've got another country opened up, another distributor in a country that we've never operated in before. And why is that? I gave you my definition of my company earlier. The company is defined as the sum of the individuals within it. But what's my duty as its owner? My duty as its owner is to create a happy and dynamic environment for those individuals in the company so that we create a sustainable and profitable company overall. So if we create a dynamic and exciting and successful environment for those individuals in my company, it's my appeal to you in my industry that we do the same in our country and that you do the same in your companies too, because it's a lot more fun that way as well. We believe the measures taken by our business could be a blueprint for others. And I'm happy, call me up anytime and we can have a chat. And the government's understanding to support any of our UK business to export more post COVID-19 is even more important in economic recovery. And I was very proud during COVID-19 to be one of, I think, 30 to 40 business leaders that were invited by government to support something called the Economic Recovery Task Force. And one of my recommendations is that we think less about innovation and as much about exporting and combine that into an export innovator model overall. The United Kingdom, finally, I leave you with this. Who are we and why should we be so excited about us? I believe that we've got 8 distinguishing capabilities and 8 distinguishing values. The former are widely understood: defense, diplomacy, development, security, but less understood: trade, finance, the intellectual and educational, and the cultural. The latter, in terms of our values, remain this: democracy, a rule of law which is our greatest enabler for equal opportunity, but which we forget, our institutions, the union, history, public service, society and family, and regulated free trade and free markets. Combined, these are the foundations for our national success and for greater global stability, security, and prosperity. They create the conditions for freedom itself. The United Kingdom fire industry has an opportunity to play its strategic part by successfully innovating and exporting, and I commend you to enjoy today, and I hope these few words of mine have been of help to you. Take care, all of you, and have a great conference.
Fabulous, thank you.